Hey, brothers and sisters, let me talk to you real quick. Just breathe for a second. Because what I'm about to say, it's gonna hit you right where all that quiet pain has been sitting. The kind you never even told anybody about. See, you have been living in a world where people love to pretend they know your story. They love to act like they wrote your script, like they got some backstage pass to your soul in them. It's wild, because the same community that tried to clown you, the same people who laughed way too loud at your mistakes, the same ones who whispered behind your back, thinking you couldn't hear them. Yeah, those ones. They're starting to choke on the truth now. Because you're marked by something they can't fake, can't replicate, can't copy-paste from TikTok motivational quotes or some cheap spiritual page. You're marked by the Most High. And they don't know how to process it. It's messing with them. It's confusing them. It's making them uncomfortable. And honestly, that's beautiful, isn't it? You, the person they counted out before the game even started. You, the one they said wouldn't be nothing. You, the walking they thought you fell off, but you were just loading. And now they gotta sit right there, front row, forced to witness the very thing they never wanted to admit. You're chosen in a way they can't compete with. And it's funny, isn't it? People never clown you because they're right. They clown you because they're scared of what you might become if you actually stood up straight, if you actually healed, if you actually unlocked even half the stuff God wired into you. You know that feeling when somebody keeps dragging your name like it pays their bills? That wasn't disrespect, that was fear wearing a cheap costume. They saw something in you before you did, and it freaked them out. Because let's be honest, some folks from your community didn't want you to grow. They didn't want you to step into anything higher. They wanted you stuck on the same block of pain they were stuck in. They wanted you to stay predictable, manageable, small, because as long as you were small, they felt big. But then something happened, something they didn't calculate for. You didn't break the way they expected, you bent, sure, but you didn't snap. You cracked, but light still leaked through instead of darkness. You stumbled, but you didn't stay down. And that right there, that scared them more than anything, because now they're watching you walk with a different type of energy, a different type of focus, a different type of divine stamp that you didn't buy, you didn't earn, you didn't hustle for. It was placed on you from day one. And now suddenly, all those jokes don't hit the same. All that fake laughter sounds nervous. All that mocking feels forced. All that gossip starts drying up. Because the moment you rise, even a little bit, they gotta face the truth. You were never the problem, you were the prophecy. They tried so hard to convince the world you were a nobody, because deep down, they knew you were becoming a threat. Not a threat to harm them, but a threat to the lies they told about you. And the moment the Most High marks you, the whole energy shifts. People who used to look down on you suddenly don't know where to look. People who used to talk sideways now gotta speak carefully. People who swore you were done now act like they knew you were gifted the whole time. And you're standing there like, bro, stop playing. You didn't believe in me. You just didn't expect me to survive. But you did. You survived environments designed to break you. You survived rooms where your name wasn't safe. You survived seasons where nobody clapped for you. You survived being misunderstood, underestimated, misjudged, and misread. Yet somehow you still walked forward. That's not confidence. That's not luck. That's not staying positive, that's the mark. That's the anointing people sense even before you open your mouth. That's the divine protection that wrapped around you when everything else fell apart. That's the spiritual barcode on your soul that says, "This one is mine, don't touch." And the community that once laughed at you, now they're confused, now they're whispering different things, not insults, but questions, not jokes, but concern, not clowning, but curiosity mixed with a little jealousy because somehow, and they don't know how, you're glowing now. You're sharper now. You're grounded now. You're not begging for approval. You're not chasing validation. You're not explaining yourself to people who don't deserve access to your truth. You're moving with intention. You're walking like someone who knows they've been claimed by something higher. You're speaking with a steadiness you didn't have before. You're making choices based on purpose, not pain. And that's power. See, you weren't chosen because you were perfect. You were chosen because you're resilient, because life hit you with stuff that would have shattered 9 out of 10 people, and somehow you turned it into fuel. You turned it into reason. You turned it into clarity. And now the same folks who tried to clown, you got to deal with the reality that every joke they told about you was just free advertising for your comeback. They got to watch you become the version of yourself they tried to prevent. They got to watch you step into places they swore you'd never reach. They got to watch you evolve into something they can't mimic or mock anymore. They got to watch you rise and rise and rise. Because when you're marked by the Most High, you don't move like the rest. Your setbacks become setups. Your wounds turn into wisdom. Your silence becomes strategy. Your patience becomes proof. Your pain becomes prophecy. And the community that once underestimated you, they can't clown you anymore. Not because they stopped trying, but because your glow outshines their noise, because your growth makes their jokes look childish, because your elevation exposes their insecurity without you saying a single word. You don't even gotta clap back. You don't gotta defend yourself. You don't gotta prove anything. You just keep walking, marked, protected, guided, and watched over by something they can't comprehend. And it's wild, because the more you rise, the quieter the room gets. You feel that, right? That shift where people who used to clown you suddenly turn into background noise, like their voice got patched out of your soundtrack. You start catching these little micro-reactions, how they look at you a second too long, how their smile twitches, how their voice shakes when they say your name, because they're realizing you weren't moving on luck. You were moving with alignment they can't imitate, no matter how many fake spiritual quotes they repost. You walk into a place and the air changes, and you're still getting used to that, still adjusting to the weight of being someone people feel instead of someone they overlook. You don't even gotta raise your voice anymore. Your presence alone checks the whole room. And it's funny because you've been this person the whole time. You just didn't believe it. You kept shrinking yourself to make insecure people comfortable, thinking if you dimmed your glow, it'd calm them down, thinking if you stayed quiet, they'd stop targeting you. But the targeting wasn't about your volume. It was about your vibration. And the more you step into that, the more you start noticing how many situations you outgrew without even consciously trying. You look around one day and realize half the chaos you used to drown in doesn't even reach you anymore. People who once had access to you can't even get a text back now. Not because you're petty, but because your soul stopped resonating with anything beneath your calling. It's like your spirit hit an upgrade and didn't send them the software update. You ever see how uncomfortable people get when they realize you're no longer who they rehearsed their insults for? That's what's happening. They practiced clowning a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. They trained their mouth on the older version, the wounded one, the version that apologized for taking up space, and they don't know how to talk to this version of you, the one walking with divine fingerprints all over your path. Every time they poke at your past, it exposes how terrified they are of your future. You can hear it in how they stumble over their sarcasm. You can feel it in the fake little laughs they force out like, ha 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 ha, yeah, you always been different. When deep down, they're trying to figure out when exactly you slipped out of the box they put you in. Their confusion isn't your problem anymore. Their discomfort isn't your responsibility. Their disbelief isn't your limitation. Because you didn't get marked by the Most High for decoration. You got marked for direction, for purpose, for protection that doesn't need an audience or approval. And every step you take is reminding them of that. And the craziest part is, you're not even flexing. You're not even trying. You're just existing in your truth. You're just breathing in alignment. You're just walking in a path that was carved before they even learned your name. You can feel it in your chest sometimes, that quiet heaviness that isn't fear anymore, but awareness. Like you finally understand the assignment you used to run from. You notice how people study you now, like they're trying to solve an equation they never learned the formula for. You see it in the way they lower their voice when you walk by, in the way they switch the topic, in the way they act like they cheering for you, but their eyes are scanning you like they checking for cracks. And, you can't even blame them, because they're watching something they can't explain. You went from being the joke to being the reminder. The reminder that divine timing is disrespectful to human expectations. The reminder that someone can be overlooked for years and still be chosen. The reminder that destiny doesn't ask for permission. You feel something rising in you that wasn't there before. That fire behind your ribs, that unshakable frequency that says you survived things you had no business surviving, and that wasn't by accident. You start catching yourself standing different, speaking different, even thinking different, like your soul is stretching into the shape it was always meant to take but couldn't fit into, while you were living for other people's comfort. And, it hits you sometimes out of nowhere. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't a comeback. This wasn't a glow-up. This was alignment revealing itself in slow motion. And every person who clowned you, doubted you, dismissed you, tried to box you in, tried to reduce you to their insecurities, they're watching you become the version of yourself that their spirit recognized long before their ego did. They felt the mark before you noticed it, and their fear disguised itself as disrespect. Because that was easier than admitting they sensed something divine resting on someone they tried to treat like a nobody. You're unsettling them because you're stepping into the truth they tried to bury under rumors and jokes. And each step you take with that divine stamp on you keeps reminding them that what they tried to break didn't break at all. It evolved, it sharpened, it expanded, it ascended, and they're witnessing the transformation they never wanted to see, but can't look away from either. And there's this thing that starts happening when you walk like that. When you stop shrinking and start existing in your actual size. People who used to treat you like background noise suddenly start watching you like you're the main character in a show, they weren't cast in. They study your moves, your silence, your tone, your energy, like they're trying to figure out what changed, like they're looking for some cheat code you downloaded overnight. You can see it in their eyes, that mix of envy, awe, confusion, and that little touch of fear they don't want to admit to, because they're realizing this version of you isn't playing the game they built. You're not trying to fit in their narratives anymore. You're not bending to their comfort zones. You're not looking for permission to breathe. You're walking with divine fingerprints on your spirit, and they can't unsee it. Every time you show up, it's like they're forced to face the reality that they misread you, misjudged you, mislabeled you. It's awkward for them. You can feel that awkward tension in the air, like they're trying not to make eye contact, because it reminds them of how aggressively they underestimated you. And you catch yourself thinking like, damn, you really thought I was the weak one, huh? But you don't even need to say it out loud. Your presence says it for you. Your glow says it. Your elevation says it louder than any clapback ever could. You start noticing how quiet their jokes become. Not because they matured, but because your growth exposes their insecurities too clearly. It's like your energy puts a spotlight on everything they've been trying to hide about themselves. They're not laughing at you anymore because they're too busy trying to figure out why your resilience looks like divine protection instead of luck. And it hits different when you realize the Most High marked you in ways that make people act funny without you doing anything. You just exist, and it triggers something in them. You talk, and it reroutes their whole mood. You walk into a room, and the atmosphere adjusts around you. Not because you're perfect, not because you're better, but because you carry something they can't imitate, no matter how many fake, positive vibes, quotes they repost. You feel that weight behind your steps, that stabilizing force inside your chest, that sense of being guided even when you don't know the full map. And the wild part is, you used to think you were lost, when in reality, you were being aligned so precisely that anybody who tried to clown you was basically clowning divine timing itself without knowing. People don't clown what they're confident about. People clown what scares them. People clown what they secretly admire but can't control. People clown what they can't become. And seeing you walk with that quiet conviction, it's messing with them heavy. You can sense how they try to re-enter your life like nothing happened, testing the waters with little comments, little "I see you doing your thing" remarks, little fake encouragements that sound like they swallowed their pride whole just to say it. Their energy feels shaky around you, like they're tiptoeing because something in them knows they're not talking. To the version they disrespected, you're not carrying old wounds the same way anymore. You're not flinching at old triggers. You're not explaining your purpose. You're not defending your worth. You're not negotiating your value. You're not waiting for people to understand you. You're standing there with this unbothered aura like, yeah, I've been chosen. I just didn't know it back then. And it shakes something deep inside them. They don't know how to handle someone who grew in silence, healed in private, and rose in ways nobody predicted. And it's kind of poetic watching their reactions, how their confidence shrinks when yours expands, how their tone changes around you, how their whole attitude shifts because they can feel the anointing before you even speak. They sense the mark, they sense the covering, they sense the transformation they never saw coming. You're becoming this walking contradiction to everything they said about you. And every step you take makes their old narratives crumble inside their own heads. They're realizing the version of you they tried to clown was just the seed, not the tree. and they're standing there staring at the branches, like they forgot seeds were meant to grow. And the way they look at you now, it's not pity, it's not mockery, it's not judgment, it's recognition, a recognition they tried to avoid because it means admitting they were wrong about you from the start, and that truth burns their ego every time their eyes meet yours. And it gets even clearer when you walk past them, and you can literally feel their spirit flinch, like your presence hit something inside them they've been trying to hide from themselves. It's that weird tension, that silence, full of all the things they can't say out loud, that quiet panic behind their eyes, because every part of you reminds them of how wrong they were about you. You can sense how they're replaying old moments in their head, realizing they weren't clowning you, they were exposing their own limits. They were projecting their fears onto someone who was carrying a destiny way bigger than their imagination could stretch. And that realization sits heavy on them, heavier than any words you could ever throw back. You ever catch them staring at you like they're waiting for you to mess up, but at the same time hoping you don't? It's strange, right? Like they're low-key rooting for you now, but also low-key terrified of how high you might go, because every step you take upward forces them to confront how little they saw in you when it actually mattered. There's this thing in the way they talk to you now, not confidence, not superiority, but caution. They pick their words like they're walking barefoot on glass, like one wrong sentence might remind you of the disrespect they thought you forgot. You're not holding grudges, you're just holding awareness, and that awareness alone is enough to make them act different. And the wildest part is you don't even have to flex anything. Your growth is the flex, your healing is the flex, your peace is the flex, your silence is the flex. You're carrying yourself with this calm power that doesn't need validation, and it messes with people who took you doubting yourself. They're watching the glow-up they didn't believe you were capable of, the glow-up that has nothing to do with money or aesthetics, and everything to do with elevation of the soul. That internal shift that leaks out through your eyes, your voice, your posture. It's like you're radiating something they can't put a label on but can't ignore either. You ever notice how people who once tried to belittle you suddenly act like they knew you were different? That fake prophetic energy, like, I always knew you had something special. When you remember exactly how they acted when you were struggling, how they laughed, how they doubted, how they tried to dim everything that was forming inside you. There's this subtle panic inside them because they're realizing you didn't need them to become who you are. You didn't need their approval, their validation, their support. You grew in soil they swore was too dry for anything to bloom. You built strength in seasons where they expected you to quit. You turned silence into transformation and pain into clarity. And the moment they see that mark on you, the spiritual weight, the glow that doesn't fade, the resilience they can't comprehend, they start moving in contradiction. One minute they're humble, next minute they're awkward, next minute they're overly nice, next minute they're trying too hard to stay relevant in your orbit. It's because they feel something divine around you, even if they can't explain it. That covering, that protection, that sense that everything they tried to use against you ended up becoming part of your elevation. It's unsettling for them, watching you walk with that type of grace, after everything meant to break you. You're shifting in ways they didn't think were possible. And every shift is a reminder that they never had the final say in your story. Their opinions didn't shape your destiny. Their jokes didn't cancel your purpose. Their doubt didn't dent your calling. They threw shade at seeds that were always going to sprout anyway. Well, well, well. Look who's still breathing after all that. You quiet warriors, you silent assassins. They never heard you coming, but now they can't stop hearing the echo of what you left behind. Let's talk, shall we? You didn't need applause. You didn't need a crowd. You didn't need their validation, their noise, their fake little rituals of approval. While they were dancing for attention, you were studying their rhythm, calculating, patient, silent. They mistook your stillness for weakness. They thought being loud meant being strong. They thought silence was submission. But you were just learning the board. You weren't quiet because you were scared. You were quiet because you were dangerous. Because every time they moved, you were already 6 steps ahead. They screamed. You whispered. They posted. You vanished. They begged for eyes on them. You thrived in the dark, where no one knew your next move. And now they're stuck, rewinding every moment, overanalyzing every conversation, replaying every smirk, every word, every pause. Why didn't they react? Why didn't they break? Why didn't they chase me when I walked away? Because you knew what they didn't. That power isn't noise, it's presence. And you were a goddamn fortress dressed like a whisper. You kept it low-key. But that wasn't passivity, it was preparation. You let them think they had the upper hand. You let them monologue. You let them celebrate false victories. And while they were laughing, you were lining up every piece on the board. Then, checkmate. No warning, no fireworks, just silence. The kind that makes a narcissist spiral. The kind that echoes louder than screams. Now they're obsessed, not because you gave them something, but because you didn't. You didn't scream. You didn't fight. You didn't explain. You just moved. Exactly when it hurt the most. See, they were playing checkers with broken rules. You were playing chess in a mirror maze. You didn't want revenge. You wanted clarity. You didn't want war. You wanted peace. The kind that comes when you burn the bridge yourself and smile while it collapses. You didn't manipulate. You mastered. And now they sit there, wondering. Where did they go wrong? What did they miss? Why can't they stop thinking about you because you were the plot twist they never prepared for? The quiet storm, the moment the predator realized they weren't the apex after all. You didn't ruin them, they ruined themselves, trying to control someone who refused to play by their script. You weren't just different. You were unreadable, and that terrifies them, because people like that, they need a reaction. They live off your triggers. They feed on chaos. They're addicted to being the center. But you didn't orbit around them. You became the center. And when you walked away, their whole little universe collapsed in on itself. Because deep down, they knew. You were the real power, not the loudest, not the flashiest, but the one who left without flinching. The one who could have exposed them, but didn't. The one who could have begged, but vanished. The one who played the whole game without ever needing to cheat. You didn't stoop. You elevated, and in that, you became untouchable. Now they obsess. Now they spiral. Now they study your silence like scripture. And you just keep moving. Unbothered, unattached, unreachable. Because silence is the final blow. It's the checkmate they never saw coming. And you're already playing a new game. So remember this, they don't hate you because you hurt them. They hate you because you didn't need to. You kept it low-key, but you played them like chess. Now they're stuck, forever chasing pieces they'll never hold again. Checkmate. They thought the game ended when you left the table. But the truth is, the real game began the moment you stopped playing. Because now they're not strategizing, they're obsessing, they're not winning, they're unraveling. You gave them nothing to hold on to. No closure, no chaos, no final scream, no explanation. And that, my friend, is the most excruciating weapon you ever wielded. You didn't even have to hurt them. You just let them hurt themselves. With every imagined scenario, every internal monologue, every theory that ends in, what if I was never in control? Because you didn't ghost them, you outgrew them. You didn't disappear, you ascended. And ascension is the one thing the insecure can't stomach. The fact that someone saw everything, every lie, every manipulation, every low blow, and still didn't flinch, didn't react, didn't break. You handled them. You studied their patterns like a map of war. And instead of lighting it on fire, you folded it, slipped it in your coat pocket, and walked straight through enemy lines like a phantom. You weren't cold. You were done. There's a difference. They wanted chaos. You gave them calm. They wanted noise. You gave them the void. And what's worse than being hated, being forgotten, being irrelevant in the mind of someone you thought you controlled? Oh, they're not sleeping. They're wide awake at 2 a.m., scrolling through old messages, rewatching your silences like horror films. You left them in the scariest room of all, the one with only their thoughts. And now they study you like you're a riddle carved in obsidian. How did I lose them? Why didn't they fight back? Who was I really dealing with? They wanted to be the villain, but they didn't realize you don't need a nemesis when you're the one writing the story. You kept it low-key. Not because you were passive, but because you understood something they never will. Power isn't always loud. Revenge isn't always explosive. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's surgical. Sometimes it looks like peace, but cuts like truth. They thought your silence was weakness. But that silence, it was strategy, a long game. See, chess isn't won in chaos. It's won in control, in discipline, in knowing when to sacrifice the pawn. Because you're already lining up the king, you never had to shout. You showed them, not with rage, with restraint. And that's what drives them mad. You played their whole ego like a piano, hit every note, skipped the crash, and walked away like a ghost in silk. Now they crave your energy, but they only get memories. Now they want your attention. But you've muted their entire frequency. They underestimated you. They thought you were just another player. They didn't know. You were the one designing the board. They're stuck now, trapped in a mental loop they built for you, but now can't escape themselves. Trying to win a game you already finished. You kept it low-key, but you played them like chess, and now they're spiraling through every move, one by one, until the only piece left standing is the one they never saw coming, you. They're not just replaying what happened. They're trying to rewrite it, because the truth you left behind is too loud, too raw, too devastating. They tell themselves you were cold. They tell themselves you were fake. They tell themselves you were never that deep. But if that were true, why are they still stuck in your shadow? Why does their entire identity now revolve around trying to prove they were right about you, when deep down, they know they never even knew you? They never saw the depth. They just saw the surface and mistook the calm water for something shallow. They had no idea what kind of storm was hiding underneath. Because here's the thing, people like them. They don't fear conflict. They fear confusion. They fear being outplayed. They fear that someone saw through them and never said a word. You didn't just handle them. You studied them. And when you walked, you left them with a silence that echoes louder than any scream they've ever heard. A silence so deafening, it's made them question their whole persona. You didn't just break the game. You became the game. Every interaction you gave them was deliberate. Every smile, every pause, every withdrawal wasn't a reaction. It was a setup. And now they look back, thinking they were in control, but realizing you were moving pieces from the start. You weren't being mysterious. You were being merciful. You let them think they had power. You let them dance with their delusions. You let them feel superior. Because you knew the real checkmate wasn't a clapback. It was your absence. Your silence is a mirror, and they can't stop staring into it. Seeing every mask they wore, every tactic that failed, every empty performance fall apart without an audience to clap for it anymore. Because you were the only one who didn't buy the act. You were the only one who could see behind the eyes. And that's what shook them. Not that you left, not that you rejected them, but that you saw them and still walked away unimpressed. No fanfare, no fireworks, just nothing. You became the final move, not something they could counter, not something they could fix, not something they could win back. You didn't just keep it low-key. You made your existence the one chapter in their story they can't explain without admitting defeat. And now, they obsess. Because there's no comeback for someone who never even played your game. You weren't playing chess with them. You were playing chess with yourself. Perfecting your control, sharpening your focus, evolving. While they stayed stuck trying to bait a reaction you never planned to give. You didn't just leave the board, you became the board. You're the arena now. They're stuck in it. Fighting shadows, arguing with silence, wrestling with ghosts. And all the while, you've been at peace, because you never needed revenge. You never needed to win. All you needed was to remember who you were before they ever thought they had access to you. And once you did that, game over. So let them spiral, let them overthink, let them rewind your every move like it's scripture. Let them choke on the silence you gave so effortlessly, because they'll never figure it out. And that's the checkmate they'll live with forever. They thought the game ended when you went silent. But what they didn't see was that silence wasn't your ending, it was your beginning. Because you didn't just disappear. You didn't just walk away, you ascended, and ascension is a death they can't explain. Because it's not dramatic, it's not loud, it doesn't come with fireworks or closure or final acts. It's just, you're not accessible anymore. Not emotionally, not mentally, not spiritually, not vibrationally. You evolved into something they were never built to reach. You didn't block them, you outgrew them. You didn't punish them, you transcended them. And now, they're stuck trying to provoke a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. See, they thought you were just being distant. They didn't realize you were rebuilding, recalibrating, shedding skins, burning the blueprint they used to read you, and writing a new one they'll never decode. They thought you were withdrawing, you were evolving, and the hardest part for them now? It's not the silence, it's the growth. It's the fact that you didn't collapse. You expanded, and every version of you they tried to break was just a stepping stone to the version they now can't even speak to. You're not cold, You're healed. You're not detached. You're divine. You're not heartless. You're just not wasting your heart where it isn't honored anymore. And now, you walk different. You speak different. You breathe different. Because when you go through hell without screaming, you come out wearing silence like armor. They wanted you to stay small, predictable, emotional, reactive. But you didn't just break the pattern. You became the anomaly. You left the algorithm. You left their emotional code base. They can't push your buttons anymore because you ripped them out of the console. They're trying to trigger a ghost, trying to bait a god, trying to pull down someone who now flies above the storm. You didn't get even. You got better. You didn't play dirty. You played disciplined. And now the only revenge they'll ever taste is the emptiness you left behind. You were the source of all the chaos, but you were also the stability that kept their game standing. And now that you're gone, the whole circus collapsed. You didn't just leave a hole. You left a void, a vacuum, an absence so loud it screams through every room they walk into. And here's the twist they never saw coming. You never needed to explain, because people who are busy building themselves don't stop to justify the ruins they left behind. You kept it low-key, but you played them like chess. Now you're not even playing anymore. You're ruling. You became the silence. Then you became the storm. Now you're the sky above it all. And they're still stuck trying to beat a level you turned into your throne. They'll never admit it, but they miss the version of you that bled for them. They miss the version of you that doubted himself, that over-explained, that tried to earn decency from people who fed off your confusion. They miss the version of you who stayed up trying to understand why they did you dirty, instead of just locking the door and vanishing into evolution. But that version, he's dead. And what replaced him is something they can't get close to without burning. You're not guarded, you're armored, you're not bitter, you're battle-tested, and no amount of bait. No amount of guilt-tripping, gaslighting, love-bombing, fake apologies, nostalgic games, staged vulnerability. None of it works anymore. Because you don't move from emotion now. You move from alignment. You rewired the whole machine, ripped the cables out, burned the instruction manual, built a new control system, one that runs on truth, not approval. They can't touch you now, not because you're hiding, but because you've become immune. Immune to the performance, immune to the manipulation, immune to the flattery they used to drip like venom in your ears. Because you've seen what lives behind the mask. You watched them shift from savior to snake, to victim to ghost to savior again, just to keep control. And you never said a word. You just watched and remembered, watched and learned, watched and outgrew. They can't penetrate that now, because your mind doesn't seek comfort from chaos anymore. It seeks clarity. It seeks peace. The kind of peace you earn by setting fire to your old self and rising from the smoke with no leash left on your soul. And now they're furious, because their old tactics bounce off you like dull knives. Their manipulations have no place to land. Their drama has no stage, because you built a kingdom where chaos doesn't get a throne. Only discipline does. Only intuition does. Only the healed version of you rules now. They can't reach him. He's not where they left you. They can't tempt him. His hunger changed. They can't distract him. His focus is now fatal. Because now, you walk through rooms where old demons used to haunt you with a smile that says, "Try it again, I dare you." You kept it low-key. You played them like chess. Then you ascended. Now you're untouchable, because you didn't just escape the game. You became the one they'll never outgrow, outplay, or ever understand. They don't talk to you anymore, but they talk about you constantly. That's how it always ends, isn't it? You vanish, and the myth begins. Because now, you're not just a person to them. You're an echo, a ghost with teeth, a moment they can't unlive. You said nothing, but your silence has chapters. You gave no closure, but your absence is a sermon they study at midnight. They don't understand how you did it, how you walked away with dignity, without needing to expose them, without needing to explain, without needing to bleed for the crowd. You didn't try to be remembered. That's why they can't forget you. And here's what they'll never admit out loud. They didn't just lose you. They lost access to your mind. They lost the privilege of being misunderstood by someone who could have understood everything, but chose not to. Because that's the most devastating truth you left behind. You could have destroyed them. You could have exposed them. You could have humiliated them. You could have been their karma. But instead, you became their mirror. And they've been avoiding the reflection ever since. You kept it low-key. You played them like chess. You transcended the board. And now, you don't even show up to the war. But your legend does. Your name passes between lips like folklore. Something about them was different. Nothing I did worked. I thought I had them figured out. Now they warn others about you. They tell people, be careful. They don't play fair. Not realizing you never played at all. You observed, you understood, and then you ascended. You don't move for clout. You don't fight for attention. You don't post your pain. Because true power doesn't need to perform. It just exists. Your presence is no longer required because your impact did the job. They still argue with you. In their head, in their group chats, in their stories, in their memories. But you've moved on to galaxies they can't spell. And that's what hurts them the most. They used to own your attention. Now they're praying for your shadow. They used to live rent-free in your mind. Now they can't afford the price of your silence. You used to give your energy away like it meant nothing. Now your energy is currency. You used to question your worth. Now your absence is their punishment. And they'll never reach you again. Not because you blocked them, but because the version of you that would have answered no longer exists. You kept it low-key. You played them like chess. Now your silence is scripture, and your story is one they'll tell forever, but never fully understand. They tried to decode you, and ended up decoding themselves, badly. They wanted answers, but all they found were mirrors, distorted reflections of their own insecurities, amplified by the silence you weaponized with surgical precision. Because you didn't just walk away. You erased your footprints. You didn't just level up. You deleted the staircase, and now they're stuck in the hallway, knocking on a door that no longer exists in a house that never belonged to them. You became their unsolvable puzzle, a Rubik's Cube soaked in gasoline. They can't fix it. They can't ignore it. And every attempt just gets them burned. Because what haunts them now isn't your cruelty, but your kindness. The way you could have ended them and chose to outgrow them instead. You never exposed their darkness. You simply became the light they couldn't manipulate. They thought they were the storm. But you were the silence after the destruction, the kind that reminds them. You did this to yourself. Now they talk to the memory of you. They argue with your ghost. They rehearse conversations in their mind that will never happen. Because the you they knew was just a draft of the you they could never finish writing. You gave them nothing, and that's what haunts them. Because everything they needed to heal, you had it. But they played instead of protected. They manipulated instead of understood. They mocked instead of valued. And now, they replay your silence like a crime scene they'll never solve. You became a paradox, unreachable but unforgettable, unseen but everywhere, gone but louder than ever. You're not healing anymore. You're not growing anymore. You're finished. You are the completed version, the final draft, the one they never believed you'd become, because their vision of you was so small, it collapsed under the weight of your evolution. And here's the truth. You never needed revenge. You never needed closure. You never needed applause. You needed distance. And once you had that, you woke up as your highest form. And in that form, you became uncontactable, untriggerable, unreachable. Because now, you don't even exist in the same dimension as them. They throw stones at water, hoping to see your face in the ripple. But all they see is their own reflection, broken and alone. You kept it low-key. You played them like chess. Then you rose and kept rising, until one day, you disappeared from the board completely. And now, you're not a player, you're not a king, you're not a piece on the board, you're the myth they whisper about, in the ruins of the game you outgrew, forever.